Vietnam and France. 1. Summarize the domestic and international historical background leading to the French invasion and colonization of Vietnam. 1.1 The background of Vietnam before the French invasion, 1858. The economy. Vietnam's economy under the rule of King Tu Duc was so declining and weak, the treasury was exhausted, so the court had to collect high taxes to compensate. People was miserable, natural disasters and flooding occurred frequently. The politics. The king and mandarins dignified Confucianism, so they were very conservative in absorbing Western scientific and technological advances. The king disliked Western people, so Vietnam limited trading with Western countries. The king suppressed Christianity and killed Western priests and Christian. The court faced around 40 rebellions due to the dissatisfaction. Defense. The army was very backward, was mainly equipped with primitive weapons such as bows and arrows, swords, spears. The amount of guns was very small, each group of 50 soldiers had 5 guns. The fighting spirit of soldiers was not good because of the food shortage. 1.2 The background of world before the French invasion, 1858. European empires like England, France, Spain, Holland, Portugal, Belgium were enhancing, invading and exploiting colonies all around the world to look for resources such as gold, silver, bronze, tin, lead and cheap labor for the Industrial Revolution. Vietnam has the geopolitical position with more than 3,000 kilometers of coastline, located in the busiest shipping route connecting Europe and Asia. Besides, Vietnam is very rich in natural resources, so France was so avid to colonize Vietnam. In 1857, Emperor Napoleon III founded a Vietnam Research Committee including a lot of Far East experts to plan for the invasion of Vietnam. In August 1958, France fired to attack Sun Tra Peninsula, Da Nang, marked the invasion of Vietnam. Until 1884, France had completed the invasion of Vietnam and transferred Vietnam became a colony of France. 2. What did French colonists do in Vietnam and to Vietnamese people? How did the actions affect Vietnamese society and Vietnamese people? Were there any accidentally good things that French colonists did in Vietnam? 2.1 What did French colonists do in Vietnam and to Vietnamese people? The exploitation of resources. In 1885, after occupied Hue capital, French colonists robbed 2.6 tons of gold, 30 tons of silver and transported them to France. French colonists founded a lot of mineral companies throughout Vietnam to mine gold, silver, bronze, tin, lead, coal and 100% of them were transferred to France. French colonists founded farms of coffee and rubber and enforced Vietnamese people to work there in the poor condition, leading to many of them died. All coffee and rubber products were exported and money went into French's pocket. During World War II, French colonists enforced 20,000 Vietnamese men to do military service. The taxes. French implemented a heavy tax policy to collect the most, and that thing impoverished Vietnamese people. The most unreasonable tax was the poll tax, functioning as a flat personal tax on every individual aged from 18 to 60. The economy and society. French landlords, Catholic landlords, and Mandarin accounted for less than 5% of Vietnam's population but owned 70% of the land area. Vietnamese farmers had no land or very little, so they could cultivate, leading misery, and there was a heartbreaking event that the famine of 1945 took the lives of 2 million people. French colonists encouraged Vietnamese people trade and consume opium to collect the tax and reduce the resistance of them. Education. In 1930, total number of students from primary level to university level only accounted for 1.8% Vietnam's population, resulting in about 95% of Vietnam's population being illiterate. 2.2 Were there any accidentally good things that French colonists did in Vietnam? Infrastructure. French built some works and infrastructure that are quite useful for the economic development of Vietnam later as follows. North-South Railway Route. Today it is still used and assessed as one of the most beautiful railway route in the world. Long Bien Bridge, a symbol of Hanoi, Vietnam, attracting a lot of tourists. French School of the Far East, Vietnam National Museum of History, Hanoi Post Office, Hanoi Opera House, St. Joseph's Cathedral, Governor-General of French Indochina Palace, Presidential Palace. The intelligentsia. Some Vietnamese people had opportunity to approach Western advanced thoughts, knowledge, science, technology, resulting in forming the intelligentsia of Vietnam, who played an extremely role in liberating and building Vietnam, such as Ho Chi Minh, Medical Professor Ton That Tung, Professor Tran Dai Nia, Medical Professor Tran Hu Tuoc. 3. Briefly present the 1954 Geneva Conference, background, signatories, and provisions. What country decided to divide Vietnam at the 17th parallel? 3.1. Background. Geneva Conference was held on 26 April, 1954 for the purpose of restoring peace in Indochina. The conference happened in the background of France and Democratic Republic of Vietnam was fighting in the key battle of Dien Bien Phu. The Battle of Dien Bien Phu plays an extremely important role to decide who has the advantage on the negotiating table. 3.2. Signatories. 1. Democratic Republic of Vietnam. France recognizes the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia. Organize free general elections in 3 countries to form a single government for each country. 2. France. France wanted to withdraw from the Indochina War with honor while maintaining its economic interests and cultural influence in Laos, Cambodia, and South Vietnam. France was determined to keep Route 9 Khe Sanh to supply Laos from the East Sea. 3. Cambodia. Wanting to end the war and hold a general election to unify the country. 4. Laos. Wanting to end the war and hold a general election to unify the country. 5. England. England didn't want to be relative to the Indochina War. England supported France on the negotiating table and wanted eliminated Vietnam from the conference and replaced Vietnam by Myanmar being friendly to England. 6. America. America worried about the spread of communist movement in Southeast Asia. America refused to sign the agreement to pave the way for intervening into Vietnam later. 7. Soviet Union. The purpose of Soviet Union was preventing France founds the common European defense community and prevented European countries support American against them. The matters in negotiating about Vietnam, Soviet Union assigned China to handle them. 8. China. Taking advantage of this occasion to underpin its prestige and position in the eyes of European countries and did care about the interests of Vietnam. China wanted to please France and America doesn't support Taiwan against China. 3.3 What country decided to divide Vietnam at the 17th parallel? Vietnam suggested taking 13th parallel as a temporary military demarcation line. However, China urged and enforced Vietnam accepted 17th parallel to please France and America. China provided the wrong information of the Battle of Dien Bien Phu to Soviet Union to make they believed Vietnam would lose. Therefore, Soviet Union also agreed with the plan that was disadvantageous to Vietnam. 4. What country supported Vietnam during the struggle against France? Soviet Union and East European countries. They mainly provided weapons to Vietnam such as anti-aircraft guns, heavy machine guns, rockets, K-54 pistols. China. China provided food, medicine, military uniforms, and military experts to Vietnam. 5. After all, you hate French people because of what they did during their colonization in Vietnam? No, in contrast, I love French people because I believed they also love peace like Vietnamese people. I only dislike French colonial leaders who exploited my country. 2. Hoa Lo Prison. 1. Make of the introduction of Hoa Lo Prison, the construction and historical background that led to the construction of the prison, the structure of the prison, the function of the jail in different periods to these days. 1.1 The historical background that led to the construction of the prison. In 1885, King Hemgi launched Kanbong Edict appealing people and patriotic scholars to rise up and fight against French colonists. Responding to this appeal, there were around 20 uprisings against French colonists happened in 1885 to 1896 with typical uprisings such as Ba Dinh uprising led by Dinh Son Trang, Bai Say uprising led by Nguyen Tien Thuot, Hung Ki led by Phan Dinh Phung. Besides Kanbong movement, the uprisings was the biggest uprising and lasted near 30 years from 1887 to 1913, led by Hong Hoa Tam, and it caused French a lot of damage. In order to suppress these uprisings, French built Hoa Lo Prison, Central Prison, in 1896 to jail the political prisoners. Because these uprisings speed resulting in the numbers of prisoner had increased rapidly, so French must use this prison in 1899, although it wasn't completed. 1.2 The structure of the prison. Hoa Lo Prison is divided into 4 sections, A, B, C and D. Sections A and B are for holding prisoners under interrogation and dangerous prisoners. Section C is for holding French or foreign prisoner. Section D is for holding prisoner who sentenced to capital punishment. The prison are surrounded by a solid stone wall 4 m high, 0.5 m thick, set broken glass on the top and high voltage electricity to prevent breaking the prison. There are 4 watchtowers at 4 corners to observe the entire inside and outside of the prison. 1.3 The function of the jail in different periods to these days. 1. Period 1889 to 1954. French colonists used it for jailing Vietnamese patriotic scholars, political prisoners, revolutionary leaders. 2. Period 1954 to 1973. Democratic Republic of Vietnam used it for detaining American pilots, and some of them called it was Hanoi Hilton. Besides, it was used to jail spies of Republic of Vietnam. 3. Period 1973 The present. In 1993, a part of the prison is used for building Hanoi Tower. Nowadays, the prison only has a part of about 2,000 square meters which is preserved and embellished into Hoa Lo Prison Memorial Area. 2. How were Vietnamese political prisoners treated in Hoa Lo Prison? The system of cells at Hoa Lo Prison were very dark and stuffy because the windows were built close to the roof. The mobile septic tank was placed right in the cell. Dozens of people used the toilet every day. It wasn't taken away in many days, resulted in the waste was full and spilled over the floor, causing serious pollution. The prisoners had to do many types of labor such as working on dikes, maintaining roads, cleaning septic tanks. If the prisoner doesn't complete their assignments, they will not receive food. The diet of prisoners was provided through bidding. The contractor often cut the prisoners' portions and used poor quality food like moldy rice, spoiled meat and vegetable. The prisoners were not allowed to use chopsticks or spoons because French worried that they could use them to attack the prison guards, so they had to collect waste coconut shells to make spoons and bowls. Every year, the prisoners were distributed 2 sets of clothes and a thin blanket. The quantity of clothes was very poor and they were very short, so prisoners only wore them in a short term before they were torn. There were so few clothes, prisoners had to find all ways to keep warm in the winter. They had to wear all clothes they had to keep out the cold. Some women had to collect small pieces of cotton and then sewed them into a small mattress to cover their chest for keeping warm. Living in the poor condition, lack of food, lack of hygiene and tortured cruelly, so many prisoners had died when detaining it here. French colonists used barbarous methods to torture prisoners such as, jailed them in the dark cell called cacot. A place had not light as well as lacking of air. Worse, the floor was steep so the prisoner couldn't lie and only could sit. After a short time, they would suffer from edema, blurred vision, and scabies due to lack of light and hygiene. Besides, the prison guards also electrocuted family prisoner on their ears and nipples. In addition, French used guillotine, the most barbarous device in killing prisoner. After they died, French used their heads to parade the streets to threaten people. 3. What was the difference between how the French treated Vietnamese political prisoner and Vietnam treated American POWs? Prisoner of war. After 1954, American prisoner was mainly pilots were detained at here and Vietnam treated them as guests. They had beds, Western food such as bread and milk that were so expensive and luxury to Vietnamese people at that time. They could play volleyball, do exercise inside the prison. They could hold Christmas party with wine, chicken, and Christmas tree. In summary, they were treated so kindly and even they called this prison Hanoi Hilton. 4. Do you believe in all information presented in Hoa Lo Prison? Give reason to support your answer? Yes, of course, because you can see all objects at here and they will show you everything about the past. Moreover, you can watch some videos, some photos, and they are the most persuasive evidence. 3. Vietnam and USA. 1. When, why, how long did the USA get involved in Vietnam War? Why was the US defeated in Vietnam? 1.1 Why did the USA get involved in Vietnam War? USA worried that if Vietnam gains the independence and Vietnamese Communist Party take power, that thing will like a domino and cause the communist movement spread throughout Asia from Vietnam to Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, India. That thing will narrow the influence of USA and allies and be unfavorable for capitalism all around the world. Before 1954, when France was fighting with Vietnam, USA aided 100.000 tons of weapon per month. Even USA covered 80% war cost of France and sent pilots to fight at the Dien Bien Phu battle in the last period of the First Indochina War. Besides, USA considered China as big rival in the world, so to contain China USA need Vietnam become a capitalist country because Vietnam has the border with China. 1.2 When did the USA get involved in Vietnam War? In 1954, USA supported and helped Ngo Dinh Diem became president of a new government in the southern Vietnam under the sponsor of USA. USA and Ngo Dinh Diem broke Geneva Agreement, not to hold a general election to unify Vietnam. Simply, CIA supposed of holding a general election, Ho Chi Minh will win and 80% population will vote for him, he is like George Washington of USA. Tear that, USA aided $1 billion every year to help the Republic of Vietnam and even sent troops to Vietnam to fight the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. USA used 7.5 million tons of bomb in Vietnam War is triple total number of bomb used in World War II. Besides, they used 75 million liters of Agent Orange that defoliated forest, thereby to destroy the shelters of Vietnamese army. This toxic chemical caused cancer, neural disorder and birth defect in children to millions Vietnamese peoples. Moreover, it affected to more than 200,000 American and Korean soldiers. Vietnam War is a huge war of USA when they sent more than 500,000 troops to Vietnam at the peak of the war and more than 50,000 soldiers died in Vietnam. In 1973, USA withdrew its troops from Vietnam. 1.3 Why was the US defeated in Vietnam? Firstly, this is unjust war. Vietnam is far from USA about 14.000 kilometers. Why US sent its troops to Vietnam to fight? US committed the sovereignty of Vietnam, so the fighting spirit of American soldiers was low and count not be compared with the determination and will of Vietnamese soldiers. Secondly, Vietnamese army relied on mountains and forests combined guerrilla warfare to win. Next, Vietnam used People's War to win. Vietnamese people provided food, water, shelters, intelligence, paving the way and transporting weapons for the army. They became a huge and solid rear of Vietnamese army. Fourth, American army didn't understand Vietnamese army. Vietnamese army has more experience in the war than any other countries in the world. Vietnam has 1,000 years of fighting against China, the experience in fighting against France. Finally, the demonstration movement happened strongly to protest Vietnam War in the USA. 2. Who was Viet Cong? Viet Cong is a nickname used by USA and Republic of Vietnam to call communists fighting against USA and Republic of Vietnam under leadership of National Liberation Front of South Vietnam. 3. What countries supported Vietnam during the struggle against the USA? 1. Soviet Union. Soviet Union provided weapon, tanks, rockets, AK guns, fighter aircrafts, warships. 2. China. China provided food, goods, medicine, and other products. 3. The other socialist countries. Some other socialist countries such as Hungary, Cuba, East Germany, Poland, provided Vietnam with weapon and food. 4. People who love peace all around the world. Students, scholars, workers, artists in USA, England, Canada, Holland, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, they protested against Vietnam War. 4. After the event the fall of Saigon, to which countries did Vietnamese boating people and refugees go to? Why did they leave Vietnam? After the event the fall of Saigon, people in Saigon worried about their future and the suppression of the new government, so they used boats to migrate overseas, and they were called boating people. There were 20 countries accepting these refugees, and the list as follows. Group 1, USA, Canada, Australia, and France accepted about 600,000 refugees. Group 2, some Western European countries and Northern European countries such as England, Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Finland. Group 3, some Southeast Asian countries such as Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore. 5. How is the relationship between Vietnam and USA nowadays? Do you hate Americans for what they did to your country and people? Why? Current relationship between Vietnam and USA. In 1994, USA lifted the trade embargo on Vietnam and lifted the weapon embargo in 2016. In 2023, USA and Vietnam became the comprehensive strategic partners. In 2024, total Vietnam-USA trade turnover was $134 billion. Vietnam became the 8th biggest trading partner of USA. In contrast, USA became the 2nd biggest trading partner of Vietnam in the world. Do you hate Americans for what they did to your country and people? Why? No, I didn't, because I believe that Americans also love peace and they were not responsible for what happened in Vietnam. I only hate American leaders in the past because used 7.5 million tons of bomb and 75 million liters of Agent Orange to kill millions of innocent civilians. It was so barbarous and awful. 4. Vietnam and China. 1. Present the Chinese domination of Vietnam. The history of Vietnam associated to the resistance wars against northern invaders or Chinese invaders. Vietnam underwent 1,000 years of domination of China with 12 Chinese dynasty, and they caused Vietnamese a lot of misery such as robbery, rape, forced men into military service, destroyed villages, houses, religious works, and assimilated Vietnamese people by forcing Vietnam learn Chinese language, customs and writing. 2. Make the introduction of following people, emphasize their achievement: Tran Hung Dao, Quang Trung, Lai Thuong Kiet, No Nguyen. Tran Hung Dao. Tran Hung Dao, 1226 to 1300, he was a great general of Tran dynasty. He was a talented commander leading Vietnamese army, defeated Mongolian invader 3 times. At that time, Mongolian Empire had the most powerful army in the world. They invaded and conquered around 20 countries from Asia to Europe such as China, Myanmar, Iran, Russia, Hungary, Poland. His famous strategy called Empty Garden, Empty House. When Mongolian invaders entered Tang Long capital, everything was empty, they didn't rob anything, time passed and they ran out of food, the troop was exhausted and lost the fighting spirit. On that occasion, Tran Hung Dao led his troops to attack enemy and won the war. His famous statement, "The army is precious in its elite, not in its numbers." Quang Trung. King Quang Trung, 1753 to 1792, he was a talented general and leader of Tay Son uprising. He has never failed in his battle, and he led Tay Son army to defeat Lord Nguyen and Lord Trinh to united Vietnam. The most outstanding achievement is defeating 290,000 Qing troops just in 5 days to liberate Tang Long Citadel. Lai Thuong Kiet. Lai Thuong Kiet, 1019 to 1105, he was a talented general of Lai dynasty. He led Vietnamese army defeating Song invaders and Compa army. The most prominent achievement is taking troops into China to defeat Song army and prevented they invading Vietnam. No Nguyen. King No Nguyen, 898 to 944, he was a talented general and a clever king of Vietnam in 10th century. The most outstanding achievement is defeating the Southern Han troops on the Bac Dang River. This victory expressed his talented strategy. He used pointed ironwood stakes to set into the bottom of Bac Dang River. Then, he decoyed the warships of the enemy heading forward when tide rose and waited until tide went out. The enemy's warships got stuck and punctured. After that he led his troops to attack the enemy and won the battle. 3. Why did China repeatedly invade Vietnam? Because Vietnam has the extremely important geopolitical position on the world map. Vietnam has more than 3,000 kilometers of coastline and borders with East Sea, Pacific Ocean. Vietnam is on the busiest marine route in the world. if China control Vietnam, it controls ships, trade from Asia to Europe and from Asia to America. 4. When did Mongolia invade Vietnam, and why was it defeated? Mongolia invaded Vietnam in 3 times in 1258, 1284, and 1287. At that time, Mongolian Empire had the most powerful army in the world. They invaded and conquered around 20 countries from Asia to Europe such as China, Myanmar, Iran, Russia, Hungary, Poland. Tran Hung Dao had famous strategy called empty garden, empty house. When Mongolian invaders entered Tang Long capital, everything was empty, they didn't rob anything, time passed and they ran out of food, the troop was exhausted and lost the fighting spirit. On that occasion, Tran Hung Dao led his troops to attack enemy and won the war. 5. What was the latest war between Vietnam and China, Border War 1979? What were reasons for the war? What were reasons for the war? China wanted to draw Vietnam to become their ally to against Soviet Union but they failed. Then Vietnam signed an agreement of economy and defense with Soviet Union and that thing made China felt threatened resulting in China attacked Vietnam in revenge. In 1975, China supported and nourished the genocidal Khmer Rouge regime to contain Vietnam because China worried that Vietnam could undermine their influence in Southeast Asia. Khmer Rouge killed more 2 million Cambodians and attacked Vietnam to rob and kill thousands of innocent Vietnamese. Vietnam counterattacked and destroyed the genocidal Khmer Rouge regime. That thing made China became angry so they decided to attack Vietnam. What was the latest war between Vietnam and China, Border War 1979? On 17 February 1979, China mobilized more than 300,000 troops and 400 tanks to attack 6 northern border provinces of Vietnam with the purpose teaching Vietnam a lesson according to Chinese leaders. Due to the strong resistance of Vietnam and this was an unjust war so China had to withdraw their troops completely on 16 March 1979 and ended the war. The war happened in 1 month and caused 28,000 dead and wounded people for China and 20,000 for Vietnam. 6. How is the relationship between Vietnam and China nowadays? In 2008, China and Vietnam became the comprehensive strategic partners. In 2024, total Vietnam-China trade turnover was $205 billion. Vietnam became the 6th biggest trading partner of China. In contrast, China became the biggest trading partner of Vietnam in the world. However, the belief between two countries is still low when China has continuously violated Vietnam's territorial sea and captured Vietnamese fishermen. Besides, China always schemed to invade Vietnam's islands on the East Sea. D. St. Joseph's Cathedral and Religion in Vietnam. 1. Make the introduction of St. Joseph's Cathedral, brief history, significance, architecture, etc. History. St. Joseph's Cathedral was built in 1884 and inaugurated in 1888. Before 1884, there was a pagoda called Bao Tian Pagoda located this area, then it was destroyed by Ming invaders in the early 14th century. The cost of building the cathedral was 200,000 franc at that time. A special thing, the bishop of this cathedral held 2 turns of lottery in 1883 and 1886 to raise 30,000 franc to contribute in building the cathedral. Significance. Nowadays, it became the cathedral of the Archdiocese of Hanoi, one of centers of Catholic activities in Hanoi and surrounding areas. Besides, it is also a historical work and has high value of culture, arts and architecture, attracting a lot tourists to visit. Architecture. The cathedral models on Notre Dame in Paris. It was designed according to Neo-Gothic style. A style was popular in Europe from 12th to 16th century. It has pointed arches, high ceilings, and tall, thin columns. It is 64 m in length, 20 m in width, and its bell towers is 35 m in height. On the top is a stone cross. The cathedral was built with bricks and its wall was plastered with paperboard. In addition to Neo-Gothic architecture, the cathedral has also Vietnamese architectural features expressed through tile roofs, and its altars was decorated with Vietnamese traditional patterns. Wooden slabs was lacquered and gilded so sophisticatedly and uniquely. 2. Shortly present about the following 5 most prominent religion in Vietnam. You should explain the history and development of each religion. In Vietnam, the current number of follower of each religion. In Vietnam, the main content and exercises of each religion and the other interesting information, if any. 1. Buddhism. 2. Roman Catholicism. 3. Caodaism. 4. Protestantism. 5. Hohism. 1. Buddhism. History. Buddhism was introduced into Vietnam around 1st BC by Indian monks and then spread through the country. Buddhism developed strongly and reached its peak during 10th to 14th century under Dinh, Lai, Tran dynasty. Even King Tran Nan Tong founded Truc Lam Zen. Buddhism declined during 15th to 19th century and Confucianism replaced it in this period. Buddhism has revived from 20th century to the present. The current number of follower. Currently, Vietnam has more than 14 million Buddhists accounting for 14% of the population. The main content and exercises. The theory of cause and effect said that we reap as we sow. That means if we do good things, we'll reap good things and vice versa. Thereby, Buddhism encourages people do good deeds, cultivate virtue and accumulate virtue. There are 5 important precepts of Buddhism including, not killing, not stealing, not committing adultery, not lying and not drinking alcohol. The interesting information. Buddhism harmonized with other Vietnamese folk beliefs like ancestors worship, gods worship, mother goddess worship to create a unique type of Buddhism in Vietnam. If you visit a pagoda, you can see the altars for Buddha, gods, historical figures, mother goddess, etc. 2. Roman Catholicism. History. Roman Catholicism was introduced into Vietnam in 16th century by the Portuguese missionary by c. Next, the missionaries from Spain, Italy, France also came to Vietnam to preach. During 16th to 19th Roman Catholicism faced many difficulties because Nguyen dynasty suppressed Catholicism and killed some priests. After Vietnam became the colony of France in 1883, Catholicism developed strongly throughout Vietnam. After Geneva Agreement 1954, Vietnam was divided into 2 sections, the South and the North. There were 800,000 Catholics account for 65% total number of Catholics in the North migrant to the South. Period 1975 to 1990, after Vietnam regained the independence, Vietnamese authorities controlled tightly and restricted Catholic activities. Period 1990 the present, Vietnam reopened to Catholic activities when Vietnam integrated deeply into global community. Especially, after US lifted the embargo on Vietnam in 1994. The current number of follower. Currently, Vietnam has more than 7.2 million Catholics accounting for 7% of the population. Vietnam has the 5th biggest numbers of Catholics in Asia after China, India, Indonesia, and Philippines. The main content and exercises. To believe in one God existing in 3 persons, God the Father, God the Son, Jesus Christ, and God the Spirit. To encourage followers cultivate and practice virtue according to 10 commandments of God such as, respecting parents, not killing people, not committing adultery. The interesting information. Catholics are just allowed to worship one God, not any other spirit or any other figure. 3. Caodaism. History. Caodaism was created by Vietnamese people in 1926 in the southern province Tây Ninh. The current number of follower. Currently, Vietnam has more than 2.6 million Caodaism believers, and Caodaism is the 3rd biggest religion in Vietnam. The main content and exercises. Caodaism worships God symbolized by Ta Nan meaning the left eye or the eyes of God. Followers of Caodaism believe that all religions originate from a source of wisdom and that wisdom is expressed through Ta Nan meaning the eyes of God. The interesting information. The name Caodaism means that a place on high. 4. Protestantism. History. Protestantism was introduced into Vietnam in 1911 in the central province Da Nang. The current number of follower. Currently, Vietnam has more than 1.2 million of Protestants. The main content and exercises. To believe in one God existing in 3 persons, God the Father, God the Son, Jesus Christ, and God the Spirit. Protestantism supposes that salvation comes only by faith, not by human works. The interesting information. Protestantism doesn't a global church for its denominations. 5. Hohism. Hohism was created by Mr. Huyen Phu So in 1926 in Hoa Lo Commune, An Giang Province, southern Vietnam. The current number of follower. Currently, Vietnam has more than 2 million Hohism believers, and Hohism is the fourth biggest religion in Vietnam. The main content and exercises. Hohism encourages followers to learn Buddhism and practice good deeds, unite and love each other. The interesting information. Hohism encourages followers learn Buddhism, practice, and cultivate morality at home, not coming to pagodas, churches or friaries. 3. Is difficult for a Catholic to seek a job in Vietnamese government? Why? Of course, Catholic totally can join an army, police or a certain position in Vietnamese government because Vietnam respect the religion and the belief, and all Vietnamese people have right of religious freedom, and that thing is written in the Constitution of Vietnam. 4. Make the introduction of Dao Mao in Vietnam, primary contents, exercise and other related information. In 2016, practice of Vietnamese Mother Goddess worship was recognized as the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Why do Vietnamese people worship Mother Goddess? Because women play an important role in Vietnamese society. The mother performs the function of giving birth, raising and protecting children. Besides, Vietnam has wet rice culture, so women are the pillar in the farming works such as cultivation and harvest. Thereby, Vietnamese people have symbolized the mother as goddesses protecting and blessing them. You can see Mother Goddess worship in the pagodas, temples, churches throughout Vietnam because in Vietnamese culture, the mother represents for love and protection.